Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Friday, June 26, 2020. Thanks so much for joining me. Consumer spending is up 8.2% in May. The stat, however, is pretty meaningless when you juxtapose it to everything that's going on around us. And the fact that that spending is up only because of the stimulus, the CARES Act, the money that was provided to individuals in response to COVID-19. I'm starting there today because the most important thing that I probably will say in this entire episode is really simple and it's not bombastic and it doesn't require me raising my voice at all. Everyone knows the hidden secret of our economy is to put money into the hands of the consumers. Consumers spend. You put money into the hands of the working class and the middle class. What do we do with that money? We spend it. And this economy is actually 75% consumer based. And so when you put money into the hands of workers, we spend it. When you put money into the hands of corporations and billionaires, they hoard it. That money is not being reinvested. The excuse that was made for many years, the justification that was made many years for giving money to corporations and to millionaires and billionaires is that they would turn around and invest it. And we've seen since the recession of 2007, 2008, that is not the case. Corporations are sitting on trillions of dollars. Billionaires are sitting on billions upon billions of dollars. And those dollars are not being invested. And without that investment, that money is simply being hoarded. And it's being used to create other wealth through capital gains. Why am I going through all this? Because our economy, it really doesn't matter about cash. Money is nothing. What matters in our economy is whether or not people are participating and using their skills to create things that other people want to either consume or utilize the services of. That's how this economy grows. Well, money doesn't. We have been so deluded in terms of how we run economics in this country because it is necessary so that the government never plays a role in facilitating the growth of the economy through the working class, the middle class, the consumer. The power of this economy has always rested in the consumer, the worker, the working class, the middle class, the people who actually go out and participate, the people who make it happen. There's not a billionaire, there's not a corporation that thrives without consumers. At the end of their funnel, their entire business plan, somewhere in there, they are dependent on you. They are dependent on consumers. And so when you see this rate, 8.2% rate, consumer spending jumps in 8.2%, that's because they put money in the hands of the consumer. And the big secret that the government does not want you to know, when I say the government, really both parties, I have to throw this at the feet of both parties. They do not want you to realize that the government has always been able to put money into the hands of the people and the people consume, and this economy would grow even more. That's right. Back in 2007, 2008, when they bailed out the banks, they gave money directly to the banks. And what did the banks do? They didn't help homes. They didn't help the people who were being foreclosed on. No, they still foreclosed on those homes and kept the money from the government. So they got the money and the asset and left a lot of people homeless or back into the position of renting. But what the government could have done was to put the money into the hands of the homeowners. And what would the homeowners have done? They would have paid their mortgage. And so the banks would have gotten bailed out anyway. You see the game that they played? They played a game. The ruling elite of this country played a game in 2008, in 2007, 2008, and 2009 that gave money to banks as well as allowed those banks to maintain and keep the asset, the property, the home, the life. People's living where they lived, their houses. The banks kept those houses and took the money from the government. And here we are again in a situation that is far more dire. We're in a situation where the economy could absolutely tank again. And actually, it has tanked. Let me start there. The economy, we are actually living on an artificial economy right now. The economy is being artificially propped up by the trillions of dollars being poured into it by the Fed every single day. And if we pause to think about why the economy is in so much trouble right now, why is it in so much trouble? It's because we cannot go out of our houses and consume at the same level that we used to because there's a pandemic outside of our doors. So what does that show you? What does that tell you? It tells you that the consumer is the most important component of this economy. Those of us, labor is important. Labor is critical. Labor is probably tied, if not a very close second, to consumption. But at the end of the day, if there's not demand for your product, at the end of the day, if people are not buying your product, it doesn't matter how much you invest. Investors are not job creators. I have to put it in this context because I'm trying to paint a picture, and I need you to have all the pieces. We have been told for generations that the investors are the entrepreneurs and they are the risk takers and they are the job creators. And that's why we give preferential treatment to them in our tax code. That's why we keep capital gains tax down so low, because what we expect, or what they're telling us that they are going to do, is to take those capital gains and turn around and invest it and create jobs. And they are the engine of our economy. They're risk taking. But it doesn't matter how much money you give investors. What we've seen since the last 10 years, the 12 years since 2008, we've seen investors are not putting money back into the economy and investing. These corporations and these billionaires are hoarding these dollars. And so this myth, it has been a myth that has been intentionally woven into our minds, into the American lexicon, into our discourse, that it is the investor, it is the billionaires that invest and take the risk. They are the job creators. But at the end of the day, what do we see right now? I don't care what an investor invests today. Ain't nobody going out to buy their shit because there's a pandemic out there. And without the consumer, without the demand side of the economic equation, without us demanding those products, there are no jobs. And the only reason America is not behaving as though we are in a crisis right now is because we actually have two economies. The economy that the American government is concerned about is not the 40 million people who are without jobs. They are allowing those 40 million people who are without jobs to fend for themselves and to figure out how to navigate this pandemic without income. The only economy that this government is, and these elected officials in both parties are concerned about, is the stock market, the capital gains, the billionaires, the corporations that are exchanging money back and forth, gambling. And that's the only economy that they are actually worried about. They're leaving everyone else to fend for themselves. When the obvious solution has always been right in front of us. It's been in front of us for generations, but it's been especially in front of us during this pandemic. If the government writes checks to the people will consume from home. And businesses will be propped up by consumption. Some businesses will lose because their products cannot be consumed through the internet or delivered to their front door. And that's unfortunate. But that's the reality of a life during a pandemic where 40,000 people got infected with COVID-19, or at least we had 40,000 new confirmed cases overnight. And the reason we have 40,000 new cases confirmed overnight is we're finding out, some studies are showing that it's not because of the protests that were outside where the majority of the people were wearing masks. It's because these businesses that you cannot consume their product online and they can't deliver their product to your door, they lobbied Donald Trump and they lobbied the governors and they insisted that they open back up. And because they opened back up too soon, we are seeing an overwhelming increase in COVID-19 cases. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is that the government, and when I say the government, I actually mean both political parties. I don't mean just Donald Trump and the White House. They are committed to you never understanding how this economy could actually work. The economy would work even better. It would work just fine. That's not good enough. The economy would work even better if the government, instead of giving preferential treatment to the supply side of the equation, to investors, to corporations, to business people, if they gave that consideration to the demand side, the people who actually buy the products, the people who actually do the consumption, the people who actually would spend over what they actually earn. You give us $1 and we spend about $1.21. And so there's more wealth to be created and generated if you put money into the hands of everyday people. And COVID-19 is demanding that we sit at home and we consume from home. And those of us who can work from home, work from home. But those of us who cannot work from home, they have to live and they have to survive. And if the government sends out checks, what do you think they are going to do with those checks? They're going to spend it. And they're going to spend it in places that allows them to survive and stay safe during this pandemic, but also in places that will keep the economy going. The too long didn't read version. Here's the bottom line. The government needs to write you a check. But the problem is that there is a master game that has been played on the world, the entire world, but it was refined with precision here in the United States. And that game is to keep. How do you keep the vast majority of the population? We're talking about right now into the hundreds of millions. We're talking about 327 million people in the United States who they have kept deluded our entire lives. They have kept us from understanding a very simple concept that the things that they use, the ruling elite uses to keep us running back and forth every single week, every single day, scratching and surviving, living paycheck to paycheck, working overtime, working 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week just so that we could pay rent and start over. This cycle, this vicious and malicious cycle that they have us in is completely and utterly unnecessary. The ruling elite, the billionaires, the oligarchs that run this country and run the world, they know that this is all a game. They have us chasing after each other, chasing after raises, chasing after more hours so we can work overtime so that we can afford to get something nice for our anniversary. All of this is just a game that is completely unnecessary for the economy to work just fine. In fact, to work better. They have us working for basic survival. They have us working for basic survival like food and clothing and shelter and education and healthcare. When the fact of the matter is we have enough wealth in this country to make sure that every individual in this country has a place to stay, food to eat, healthcare, and education. And even in doing that, that would not be a drain on the economy. That would be a net benefit for the economy. The economy would grow even bigger. But they can't afford for you to understand that and for more people to understand that and for the majority of America to understand that. If the majority of America understood that this rat race that they have us in for simple survival is completely unnecessary, and if our basic survival needs were met, this economy would grow even more. But because if our basic survival needs were met, that would liberate us from the control that the ruling elite has over us. What do I mean? Very specifically, think about this. Can you leave your job and have health care? No, most people can't. And that's the way they keep us under control, because you need health insurance, because we're sick in this country and you can't afford to not have health insurance. So you stay on a job that you don't really like. Can you leave your job and in the long run be comfortable enough to know that you at least have a place to stay and you have basic food to eat? No. So they keep you taking any job that you could take. It doesn't matter. They don't care. They don't care that your job does not fit your qualifications. And that if you got a job that actually fit what you're capable of, then you could be even more productive and create something even more beneficial to society rather than you just driving for Uber. But the rulers of this world, the billionaires, they would rather that you just take some menial job that has no actual tangible contribution to society other than their bottom line. If we were ever freed from the rat race of just trying to survive 9 to 5, living paycheck to paycheck, just so that we can keep food on our table, if they didn't have us in a frenzy, running around here scrambling, and then the only thing that we can dream of is to have what billionaires have, and they keep us chasing this pipe dream that will never come to reality. You're not going to be a billionaire, but they have you chasing the fantasy of one day you'll be rich and famous, because that keeps you from the reality that we've got to change how this country works. And COVID-19 has been telling us since day one that if we do not change how we operate, instead of taking from the consumer, instead of taking from human beings, F consumers, instead of draining every individual for all they have, I want you to just pause and think about what they take from you. Think about what this system takes from you. I don't care how much money you make. At the end of the day, it's taking the same thing from you. It's taking all of your labor, and somebody's making billions off of your labor. It's taking all of your consumption, and somebody's making billions off your consumption. It's taking all of your taxes, and somebody is making billions off your taxes. Politicians are getting rich off your taxes. Corporations are getting rich off your taxes because they get subsidies, because they don't have to pay you a living wage, because your taxes are being used to subsidize them by providing welfare benefits for their employees at Walmart and Amazon. So it's taking all of your consumption. It's taking all of your labor. It's taking all of your taxes. It's taking all of your debt. You don't even have enough money to consume, but they're saying, hey, we'll capitalize off your debt. So it's taking your labor, your consumption, your taxes, your debt, and it's demanding your participation even when you should be able to be home, safe, and quarantined. Look at how deranged this system is. If you take us out of this system, if you take us out of the equation, there are no billionaires. There is no government. Not only because we would revoke our consent to be governed, but because we wouldn't be giving them taxes. We are the most critical component in this equation, and they have fooled us all of these years to make you think that some billionaire who barely lifts a finger, all he does is move digits. And what do those digits do? It commands participation. Money only incentivizes participation. Man, I'm so tired of them lying to us. I'm so tired. I am so tired of them I am furious at the fact that you have a handful of billionaires and millionaires. Barely even the millionaires. I need millionaires to really understand that you might have $3 million, but you are nothing. You are nothing compared to the billionaires who dominate society. Nothing. And I am sick and tired of a handful of people ruling over billions of people across this globe based on the lie that their contribution is more important than ours. So what do? We have to break the propaganda hold over our minds. We have to liberate our minds first. And I mean not just the few of us who listen to this podcast. I mean the billions of people across the globe. We have to liberate our mind and understand that there have been a handful of people through world history, modern world history especially, who have created a system that tells you that the only proper way for you to be able to eat is if you slave away for them in their factories, and they will pay you just barely enough to survive. And in this modern economy, they don't even have to pay you enough to survive, but they still get 100% of your labor. They still end up getting 100% of your consumption. They drain you of everything. And we see now the most important component in this economy is us. All of us. If people understood how important their individual contribution to this economy is, and if they then expanded that to see how critical and how unstoppable the hundreds of millions of us in this country alone are, the rulers of this world would have to roll out the police state. They would have to bring the army to stop us. Do you know what we could do? We could bring this entire economy to its knees by refusing to participate. And we have a justifiable reason to not participate. There are going to be so many people, unfortunately, that are going to die because the economy tried to open up. The governors, the president of the United States demanded, just compelled everyone to go back out and consume like everything was fine. And that's because they knew without us out there participating and consuming that they don't hit their quarterly profit margins. So what do? We have to spread this is our opportunity. This is our opportunity to change the paradigm. COVID-19 is demanding something of society that we have not seen in our lifetime. It is demanding that the government changes the way it treats the people, and that the government finally admit that the ruling elite are not the most important players in this equation, but the people are. And this is something really tangible. It really boils down to the fact that the government needs to open up the checkbook and start writing checks to everybody so that we can not only survive, but we can consume. And in that period, first, let me say this. The reason they are not willing to actually give us enough to survive this pandemic, the reason they only gave us $1,200 and that was it, was because they didn't want you to realize that they can help you to survive and the economy would still thrive.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. At this point in every single episode, I'd like to take a minute to thank the people who make the show possible, our patrons. Very special welcome to Shanna Pettigrew. Thank you for becoming a patron. Gregory Rodinas. Thank you for becoming a patron. Sam Bezek. Thank you for becoming a patron. Gregory Rogers. Hey, everybody just bob your head. Thank you for becoming a patron, Gregory. CDM, thank you for becoming a patron. And Frank Luther, thank you for becoming a patron. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, uncut interviews, and none of the commercial interruptions, and you give me the ability to speak truth to power, whether the powerful like it or not.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
All right. Let's go. All right, I have a whole lot more to cover and talk about in the Patrons episode. I'm going to talk about Tucker Carlson and the Daily Wire, Donald Trump, a couple of things, a couple of clips that I want to talk about. But I do want to shift the conversation just a little bit to this idea that keeps coming around. There's an idea that keeps coming around every 2 years. I've noticed about every year and a half, generally around summertime, somebody gets the big idea that we on the left should make some coalition with quote unquote populist on the right. In the first, when I first came out about 5 years ago, I engaged in those arguments tooth and nail. It was a scorched earth thing, because to me, it was the most insidious of arguments, suggesting that we should be in league with people who would just as soon rather to see us exterminated, or to see us deported, or to see us imprisoned in the prison industrial complex. And what always happens in these conversations is that we on the left should be willing to sacrifice. This is the basic premise that is forwarded, and it gets bigger every year. It gets bigger. Like, there's a bigger crowd of people who suggest this because of the disillusionment with the Democratic Party. And because of the disillusionment with the Democratic Party, some on the left think that we should make an alliance with people on the right and use that as a way of stripping power from the Democratic Party. Have you seen the Republican Party lately? Have you seen what they are and what they do? And do you realize, or do you just completely negate, or just dismiss the fact that in order for this alliance to work, the thing that always must be sacrificed is the identity of the people who would fall victim to the right-leaning populists? The number one thing that you have to give up for an alliance with the right is the very thing that's catalyzed this last uprising. They want you to ignore the police violence against black people. And it was the police violence against black people that sparked off one of the most significant uprisings in American history. And we're not even done yet. And so what bothers me is that, well, it doesn't bother me anymore. And this is why I don't really get into the conversation, because at the core of it, nothing ever comes of it. The only thing that comes of it is this natural evolution of certain people to move away, certain commentators to move away from the left and to embrace a nice, lucrative audience on the right. But there's never, ever any coalition, ever. It's all a marketing thing that you see from voices like, remember H.A. Goodman? Remember now even Michael Tracy? And I haven't seen the clip entirely from The Intercept, the show by Glenn Greenwald, who I consider to be a friend. But this is probably one of the largest platforms to actually forward this idea. And so I'm not even going to engage in it on Twitter, on social media. But I just want to talk to my audience to help you to understand that if we have to sacrifice the fight for justice in order to be in league with someone, with a group who've made it entirely clear that they would rather see us deported, rather see us in jail. They don't believe that there's anything wrong with black lives in America except we're just lazy. If you're willing to sacrifice us in exchange for them, then how could you have ever considered yourself to be an ally of ours in the first place? I think I will keep rocking with Antifa, because I know at least when the rubber meets the road, they won't sit around and say, oh, well, maybe we should be in league with these guys. What they're going to do is knuckle up. We don't need so-called allies who are constantly trying to find a way to get in bed with fascists. We need comrades that'll go to war with fascists on our behalf. All right, patrons, you know what to do. Stay tuned. 30 more minutes to go. Everyone else, thank you for being a beautiful audience. You can always get access to the patrons episode by going to patreon.com/the BPD show to get the full hour. If not, have a beautiful weekend, and I will see you Monday.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.